So welcome to this webinar. So today, after the introductions, OECM will do a quick intro of their services and mission. Then we'll talk about the top 3 challenges relating to procuring IT project-based services. We'll touch upon how OECM can help solve these challenges, and we'll talk about a success story that demonstrates how this can happen. And we'll finish with a Q&A session. Over to OECM.
Thank you. Hi, my name is Dongwon Lee. I'm a category manager at OECM, working for Supplier Relationship Management Department. Thank you so much for the hosting to the Levio team, and I'll pass it over to Jason to introduce himself.
Hi, my name is Jason Lee. I'm a customer relationship manager here at OECM. Happy to be here today. Thank you.
All right, so we'll just briefly go through who we are. We are a non-for-profit collaboration sourcing partner covering 100% of the Ontario school boards, college, and universities. And we are expanding our customer base to broad public sector customers, including municipalities, as well as non-for-profit organizations. And our recent focus to the customer base is also healthcare sector as well. So we are growing organization. We have about 1,380 plus customers, and we have total 84 categories and products and services that we carry on our marketplace. And our LTD spend since the starting of the organization is about $4.6 billion. And currently on our agreements, we have 455 unique awarded suppliers on our marketplace. Our marketplace carries educational, recreational supplies, facilities, IT hardware, IT professional services, IT solutions, furniture, furnishing, transportation, finance, and other office stationery supplies. And then we have more upcoming agreements that are launching every few weeks. So one of the reasons why customers choose OECM's marketplace is the drive of the value and the savings we provide, the compliance that the customer has to comply to, and we offer our ensured compliance with BPS procurement and then directive and trade agreements, the efficiencies, reputation that OECM holds, and the contract management that we do on behalf of the customers and the suppliers, and dedicated customer and the support model that we have. So I'll talk briefly about this specific agreement. I was in charge of this agreement since I actually joined OECM, and this agreement, we've been working with Levio for the past about 5 years. So starting date for this agreement was April 1st of 2020, and we went through pandemics together. There were a lot of demands and then supplies there. And the expiry date for this very specific agreement is next year, May 31st. And we have agreement retender that's working in place right now. And we're looking to post the retender agreement around October of this year. So OECM will make sure that we have retender agreement kicks in before this existing agreement expires. Okay. All right, so there are 2 purchasing options that we currently offer under our OECM marketplace. The first one being just utilizing the rates that are listed on our marketplace, or the other option would be issuing a second stage request. It's a request quotes from 1 or more suppliers based on the requirement of specific to your organization. So for this agreement specifically, most likely a majority of the customers will utilize the second stage option because they would like to confirm the scope of the project and then what customer requires from the suppliers. And this way, the customer is likely to receive more tailored quotes for the specific projects that the customer is looking for. We do have second stage guidelines and templates. We have linked in these slides. I'm not sure if these slides will be available, but any customers of OECM should have access to the guideline and templates per agreement. And please feel free to check out our website. I'll pass it over to Jason to talk about how to get started with OECM. Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks, Noan. So very quickly on how to access the OECM marketplace. We just included this slide to let you know that if you create an OECM account from our website, you do get access to all the agreement documents. So this includes the master agreements, price list, customer supplier agreements, etc. So you do have to have a account to get access to these. And if we go to the next slide, we just wanted to show you how you can start using OECM agreements. We say it's 5 easy steps. So assuming that you have an OECM account, you could first access the agreement landing page. In this case, it would be the IT Project Professional Services Agreement. Then you would review the master agreements and pricing of each of the suppliers you're interested in. And if you have any questions around the scope, or if you need support on second stages or anything at all, you can always reach out to OECM's customer support team, which contact information will be shared in the next slide, or you can reach out to the suppliers, including Levio, directly. If we go to the slide before, yes, so if you issue a second stage, you can figure out who you want to work with. And if you select a supplier that you're interested in working with, you can initiate the customer supplier agreement process. The customer supplier agreement is a customizable document that you can tailor it to your needs. And one ask that we have is when you do make changes to the document, that you use track change on the Word doc, because this allows our suppliers to see the changes where you wanted to negotiate on. And this really decreases the time it takes to review. So yeah, as I mentioned, whenever you have questions, you can always reach out to customer support at oecm.ca. I'll pass this back over to you, Guillaume.
All right, thank you so much. So, and my name is Guy. I'm the managing partner responsible for our public sector North American practice, and I'll just make a quick note on Levio before we talk about how OECM can actually help streamline your procurement. So Levio, we're a Canadian digital transformation consulting firm. We offer IT and management consulting services to our customers here in Canada and also in the US. We have roughly 2,000 employees, and our public sector practice represents roughly 35% of our book of business. So we do have significant experience working with government agencies and ministry and municipals and all of that. And don't worry, I'm not going to talk about all of our services in detail, but the only thing really I want to mention today is that we offer quite a comprehensive set of services to our customers, and that all of that expertise is available through the 2 OECM agreements we're part of. The most important one is the IT project-based professional services agreement. We also have a document management product that is available through the EDRMS agreement, and by the way, we're currently deploying that product in Ontario to the Ontario government to manage the Ontario provincial budget. So it's a mature and an Ontario solution. So the top 3 challenges in procurement. So contracting for public organizations, as you probably know, poses some very unique challenges. It's not always easy to reconcile the requirements for an open and competitive procurement process with the need to get the job done as quickly as possible. And when I talk about getting the job done quickly, what I'm really talking about here is 2 things. First, selecting the right partner for the job and being able to contract quickly. In our experience, there are 3 key challenges to overcome to be able to get the job done quickly. The first of them is the delay it takes from the moment that a need is identified to the initiation of the project. The number of steps in the process can sometimes be pretty daunting, especially for small work orders. So someone needs to write an RFP. Then there's an internal review process and sign-off process. Then the RFP gets posted. Then you wait 3-4 weeks. There are Q&As. You receive proposals, and then there are another few weeks to review proposals. And then you negotiate contracts, and then you sign. So all of that adds up to a lot of time. The first step I just mentioned in the whole process was write the RFP. However, I mean, it sounds simple, but writing requirements can be much more difficult than it seems. So how do you know if your team is sufficiently educated? Are they familiar with the available solutions? Do they know enough to be able to write the right requirements with the right amount of detail? Like it's not always that easy. And just to illustrate this, let's say you're looking for new jet engines for your corporate jets, and I know all public sector organizations in Ontario, everyone has that, right? So how would you go about defining the requirements? All you know is that the problem is a problem that you have. The jet engines are too noisy and they're leaking jet fuel in your backyard. Chances are that your organization would struggle to define the requirements unless you just happen to have an avionics engineer on staff, right? So I understand that this is an extreme example, but the same concept applies to IT projects. If your organization is contracting out something that it has never done before, chances are that you will struggle to define the requirements. So what happens is when you write an RFP, the RFP writer will start asking ChatGPT and will read publicly available white papers and whatnot. And although these are good for providing directional answers, they will almost always lack in the specifics. And the third challenge is really just a product of the complexity and rigor of the process. It takes bandwidth, which your team probably just doesn't have. There's a reason why you're asking for help through an RFP. It's because the team doesn't have time to do it. So how do we solve all of those? So the first one is the first question is, how do we solve the delay problem? The key element here is that OECM has already done most of the heavy lifting involved in selecting and pre-vetting vendors through a public and transparent competitive process. So instead of going through an RFP process, you can skip straight to asking for quotes. So you can negotiate directly with any OECM vendor with very little overhead, or you can ask pre-vetted vendors for quick quotes through a second stage process. Concretely, what this means is that it can be just a very short email that summarizes the need and your expected outcome. Let's take an example. Like, for instance, let's say you want to migrate some IT services to the cloud, for instance. So you could send a short email listing the services to migrate and then ask for quotes. That's simple, like just a couple of paragraphs, and that's it. And that's where the simplicity really kicks in. So instead of expending tons of energy doing the research and writing an airtight RFP, potentially providing a lot of information that may not even be relevant, just let the vendor do the work for you. As a vendor, we know what we need to know to provide the quote. When we receive an email asking for our services, we'll read it, of course, we'll analyze it, and then we'll just ask you the questions that we actually need the answers to. And what's best, we can do this intake and this Q&A via a meeting. So there's almost no time needed on your part, no need to write and craft detailed answers. We can all do that verbally. And then you wait for a few days while we work and we analyze your context, and then we send you a personalized quote using the pre-negotiated OECM terms. So it's super easy for you. Alternatively, you can also hold competitive conversations with multiple vendors and then leverage all of their expertise at no extra cost and with very little effort, again, on your part. I hope you can see how you can use OECM to dramatically decrease the level of effort needed to procure these IT services. So OECM essentially allows you to negotiate directly with vendors and then to procure services as easily as you would if you were in the private sector, while still respecting the need for a competitive and fair procurement process. So that's very important. To make this a bit more concrete, I'd like to close this webinar by illustrating the procurement process using a recent example with IKEA. 16 children's treatment centers represented by IKEA were changing their core medical record system. So you can imagine that this is not something that treatment centers do frequently, to the contrary. What that means is that they had no experience doing this at all. Yet, even though they had no experience, this was a critical project. The system is used clinically, and it's critical to deliver care to children. They neither of the 16 treatment centers had the option of getting this wrong. Absolutely not. Oh, and I don't think I mentioned, but they were also on a tight deadline. So the old system had to be decommissioned. They had a hard deadline by March 31st, 2024. They had to be off of the old system. So to summarize, complex, critical, time-sensitive project. How did OECM solve that? So EKO opted for a competitive conversation with OECM vendors. So despite the high complexity of the project, the second stage RFP was only 4 pages long. 2 weeks after releasing their mini RFP, EKO had already received proposals, and they had their proposals in hand. They shortlisted a few vendors, and they held competitive conversations with them. So instead of having to do a lot of research internally to release a comprehensive RFP, this allowed EKO to just tap into the vendor's expertise to learn about the work that needed to be done. And then by comparing the proposals and having clarifying conversations with the vendors, this allowed EKO to ask educated questions to vendors. In our case, we got 13 formal questions, which we answered in a few days. So the entire competitive process from beginning, from start to finish, took roughly a month, with a start date right after the holidays in January. And by the way, and just in case you're wondering, we did deliver the whole project on time and on budget. If you'd like to have more information on how EKO leverage OECM, just reach out to us, and we would be more than happy to put you in contact with Jennifer, the EKO president and CEO. She'll be happy to tell you how she used OECM and how she's still using OECM to this day. I am aware that this big project with EKO might be more complex than what you need to contract out. The resulting project was close to $3 million, so it was fairly large. But it does illustrate how OECM can be used very effectively for projects of any size and complexity. There's no such thing as a project that's too big for OECM, but it gives you the contract vehicle that you need to quickly get to the outcome you need. So really, that's all we had today, as a presentation. So we can open it up to questions if there are any. And this deck and also the link to the webinar will be sent to participants.
Thank you very much for the information, and I do find that the OECM RFPs have been beneficial to me. I think one of the biggest things that I want to understand is if there isn't something that's currently existing, how do we leverage OECM to help us with those initiatives?
That's a very good question, Sherry. So if you don't see an agreement that fits your needs, first of all, you can always reach out to customer support with your specific needs, because even though we do have agreements in place, the titles might not be covering the full scope of what's included within the master agreements. So the first stage would be to reach out to OECM to ask if there's any agreements in place for your needs, and if we don't, you can use what's called a sourcing intake form that's on our website. If you come to oecm.ca and click on upcoming agreements, at the top, there's like a yellow ribbon that says, if you're looking for new projects, you can click on there. And what we ask you for is information on what your requirements are. So our sourcing team can review, and hopefully we can get that project started up for you. Does that answer your question, Sherry?
Yes, that's very helpful. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much.
All right, well, thank you for your participation, and that's all we had today, really.
Thank you so much.
All right,
Thank you, everyone.
Have a good
Thank
day.
you,
Bye-bye.
everyone.